Does Mary's vision of hell harmonize with what the Bible teaches?
The enigmatic third secret of Our Lady of Fatima, a prophecy hidden for over a century, is finally on the verge of revelation. Past prophecies from Our Lady of Fatima concerning World War I and various persecutions have all come to pass, instilling fear as the more ominous third prophecy shows signs of imminent fulfillment. The pressing question now is, are we ready for what lies ahead? Join us as we delve into the third prophecy of Our Lady of Fatima and the signs indicating its impending occurrence. The Three Secrets of Fatima are a series of apocalyptic visions and prophecies given to three young Portuguese shepherds. Lucia dos Santos, often referred to as Our Lady of Fatima, and her cousins Jacinta and Francisco Marto, by an apparition of the Virgin Mary on May 13, 1917. These children claimed to have been visited by the Virgin Mary 6 times between May and October of 1917, with the apparition now widely known as Our Lady of Fatima. According to Lucia, on July 13, 1917, around noon, the Virgin Mary entrusted the children with 3 secrets. The first 2 secrets were revealed in 1941 in a document written by Lucia at the request of Bishop José Alves Correa da Silva of Leiria, intended for a new edition of a book on Jacinta. When the bishop requested in 1943 that Lucia disclose the third secret, she hesitated briefly, unsure if she had divine permission. The bishop then instructed her to write it down. In October 1943, Lucia documented the secret, sealed it in an envelope, and specified that it should not be opened until 1960, when its meaning would be clearer. Pope John Paul II made the third secret public in 2000, and it seems that this prophecy is poised to unfold in 2024. Various Catholic interpretations suggest that the 3 secrets of Fatima pertain to hell, World War I, World War II, and the persecutions of Christians in the 20th century. Among the numerous Marian apparitions examined by the Catholic Church, only 12 have received official approval, with 9 occurring between 1830 and 1933. Lucia dos Santos, known as Our Lady of Fatima, was born on March 22, 1907, although her actual date of birth is March 28th. She was the youngest child of Antonio dos Santos and Maria Rosa Ferreira, both from Aljustrel, who married on November 19, 1890. Despite being peasants, the Santos family was not impoverished. They owned land in various locations such as Montelo, Ortiga, Fatima, Valinhos, Cabeço, Charneca, and Cova da Iria. Lucia had 6 siblings. Her father, Antonio, was described by Lucia as a hard-working and generous man who introduced her to Catholicism. Contrary to popular belief, he believed his children when they claimed to have seen Mary. Although not a heavy drinker, Antonio enjoyed socializing at the tavern and, due to a disagreement with the local parish priest, attended church in a neighboring town. Maria Rosa, Lucia's mother, was literate but did not teach her children to read. She had a strong interest in religious texts and stories and often held catechism sessions for her children and the neighborhood children. Maria Rosa once described Lucia's tendency to repeat everything she heard, like a parrot. She described Lucia's appearance as follows. She was not a particularly attractive child. The only notable features of her otherwise plain face were her large black eyes beneath thick eyebrows. Her dense, dark hair was parted down the middle and cascaded over her shoulders. She had a somewhat flat nose, full lips, and a wide mouth. Despite her appearance, Lucia, Our Lady of Fatima, excelled as a captivating storyteller. She created both religious and secular songs with engaging melodies and lyrics, and she wrote a poem dedicated to Jacinta, included in her memoirs. At the age of 6, Lucia received her first communion, 4 years earlier than usual. Initially, the parish priest was hesitant to allow such a young child to receive communion. However, Father Cruz, a visiting Jesuit missionary, spoke with Lucia after finding her in tears that day and concluded that she had a better understanding of the sacrament than many others. After her first confession, Lucia prayed before the altar of Our Lady of the Rosary and claimed to see the statue smile at her. This profound experience led her to lose interest in worldly things and feel most at peace in solitude, reflecting on the joy of her first communion. By the age of 8, Lucia was already tending to her family's sheep, accompanied by other village children. Why was Lucia given the opportunity to see the apparitions? What made her special enough to receive such significant secrets? At the age of 14, Lucia was enrolled in the school of the Sisters of St. Dorothy in Vila, near Porto. Later, in 1928, she became a postulant at the Dorothean convent just across the border in Spain. Throughout her life, Lucia, Our Lady of Fatima, continued to have private visions and occasionally reported them. In the mid-1930s, the Bishop of Leiria encouraged her to write her memoirs to provide more details about her cousins and the 1917 apparitions. As early as July 1917, it was mentioned that the Lady of the Apparitions had entrusted the children with a secret, which had both positive and negative implications. However, it wasn't until Lucia's third memoir, written in 1941, that she explored the content of the secret in greater detail. In doing so, she followed the example of Melanie Calvat, a French visionary who had seen Our Lady of La Salette in 1846 and had written down the secrets from that event almost 20 years later. Lucia stated that the secret consisted of 3 parts, with the first 2 being revealed in 1941. The third part, however, was not documented until January 3, 1944. In her third memoir, 1941, Lucia documented the first secret as revealed to her and her cousins during the initial apparition. It reads, "Our Lady showed us a great sea of fire which seemed to be under the earth. Plunged in this fire were demons and souls in human form, like transparent burning embers all blackened or burnished bronze, floating about in the conflagration, now raised into the air by the flames that issued from within themselves, together with great clouds of smoke, now falling back on every side like sparks in a huge fire, without weight or equilibrium, and amid shrieks and groans of pain and despair, which horrified us and made us tremble with fear. The demons could be distinguished by their terrifying and repulsive likeness to frightful and unknown animals, all black and transparent. This vision lasted but an instant. How can we ever be grateful enough to our kind Heavenly Mother who had already prepared us by promising in the first apparition to take us to heaven? Otherwise, I think we would have died of fear and terror. The second apparition was even more frightening than the first. On July 13, 1917, the children received a partial revelation of the second secret, which pertains to the devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This secret includes various prophecies, such as the prediction that World War I would come to an end and a warning of another war during the reign of Pope Pius VII if mankind continued to offend God and if Russia did not convert. The second half of the secret emphasizes the importance of consecrating Russia to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. The second secret reads, "You have seen hell where the souls of poor sinners go. To save them, God wishes to establish in the world devotion to my Immaculate Heart. If what I say to you is done, many souls will be saved, and there will be peace. The war is going to end, but if people do not cease offending God, a worse one will break out during the pontificate of Pope Pius VII. When you see a night illumined by an unknown light, know that this is the great sign given you by God that He is about to punish the world for its crimes using war, famine, and persecutions of the Church and the Holy Father. To prevent this, I shall come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and the communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If my requests are heeded, Russia will be converted and there will be peace. If not, she will spread her errors throughout the world, causing wars and persecution of the Church. The good will be martyred, the Holy Father will have much to suffer, and various nations will be annihilated. In the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. The Holy Father will consecrate Russia to me, and she shall be converted, and a period of peace will be granted to the world. However, the second prophecy remained undisclosed until August 1941, after the commencement of World War II. Some proponents of the Fatima prophecies argue that the undisclosed information did not specify that the war had to start in Europe, and note that Japan had already invaded China in 1937 during the reign of Pope Pius V, a period that many historians in China and other Asian regions consider the actual beginning of World War II. This view is also partially supported by certain Western historians. Detractors argue that various conflicts such as the Russian Civil War, the Irish War of Independence, the Chinese Civil War, the Italo-Ethiopian War, and the Spanish Civil War demonstrate that the prophecy of one war ending and another beginning does not necessarily indicate divine inspiration. Are wars inevitable regardless of prophecy? Does this suggest that the prophecy of Our Lady of Fatima is mere speculation? Some supporters of the prophecy emphasize that the second undisclosed information predicted a war more devastating than World War I, not just any armed conflict. Furthermore, regarding the conversion of Russia, there was already significant revolutionary activity before the Bolshevik Revolution, as evidenced by the earlier February Revolution in 1917 and the presence of communist and anarchist movements. In response to the 2022 Russian invasion of Ukraine, Pope Francis declared his intention to consecrate Russia and Ukraine to the Immaculate Heart of Mary, a ceremony that took place on March 25, 2022. Before we discuss the third secret, let's look at the miracle of the sun. The miracle of the sun, also referred to as the Miracle of Fatima, is a sequence of extraordinary occurrences that reportedly took place on October 13, 1917, in Fatima, Portugal. A large gathering had assembled in response to a prophecy made by three shepherd children, Lucia Santos, Francisco, and Jacinta Marto. These children had foretold that the Virgin Mary would appear on that specific date and perform miracles. Numerous witnesses testified to witnessing remarkable solar activity during the event, including the sun seemingly dancing or zigzagging in the sky, moving closer to the Earth, and emitting vibrant, multicolored light. According to these accounts, the phenomenon lasted for approximately 10 minutes. In November 1917, the local bishop initiated a canonical investigation into the event. The purpose was to examine the testimonies of witnesses and determine whether the alleged private revelations from Mary aligned with Catholic theology. The investigating priest was particularly impressed by the consistent reports of extraordinary solar phenomena provided by secular journalists, government officials, and skeptics present at the gathering. On October 13, 1930, Bishop José da Silva declared the miracle to be worthy of belief, officially authorizing the veneration of Our Lady of Fatima within the Catholic Church. During a gathering held on October 13, 1951, in Fatima, Cardinal Federico Tedeschini, the papal legate, informed the massive crowd of 1 million attendees that Pope Pius the Saint himself had personally witnessed the miracle of the sun from the Vatican gardens on October 30th, October 31st, November 1st, and November 8th, 1950. This extraordinary event, along with the associated prophecies, has had a profound influence on the religious practices of numerous Catholics. The miracle and its related accounts have been extensively scrutinized from both sociological and scientific perspectives. Critics argue that the testimonies provided by eyewitnesses were inconsistent and contradictory. They propose alternative explanations, such as the possibility that prolonged gazing at the sun may have deceived the witnesses' senses, leading them to perceive something unusual. Is the miracle of the sun real, or is it just a fragment of people's imaginations? Francisco and Jacinta, the youngest children of Manuel and Olympia Marto, had a typical upbringing for Portuguese village children of that time. They were unable to read or write. According to their cousin Lucia's memoirs, Francisco had a calm nature. Francisco and Jacinta possessed musical talents and enjoyed moments of solitude for contemplation. Jacinta, affectionate and with a beautiful singing voice, also displayed a talent for dancing. Despite their extraordinary experiences, their fundamental personalities remained unchanged. Francisco found solace in solitary prayer, believing it would console Jesus for the world's sins. On the other hand, Jacinta was deeply affected by a terrifying vision of hell shown during the third apparition. She became convinced of the urgent need to save sinners through penance and sacrifice, as instructed by the Virgin Mary. Both siblings embraced rigorous self-discipline and self-sacrifice to fulfill this mission. Tragically, the siblings succumbed to the devastating 1918 influenza pandemic that swept across Europe. In October 1918, Jacinta confided in Lucia that Mary had appeared to her, promising to take them to heaven soon. Despite their deteriorating health, they continued walking to church for Eucharistic devotions and spent hours in prayer, following the angel's instructions. Francisco declined hospital treatment on April 3, 1919, and passed away at home the next day. Believing her fate was sealed, Jacinta was transferred to Urem Hospital in a last-ditch effort to save her life. Despite her rapidly declining condition, she was eventually moved to the orphanage of Our Lady of Miracles in Estrela, Lisbon, where she underwent a risky operation for purulent pleurisy. Despite enduring excruciating pain during the procedure, Jacinta remained resolute, convinced that her suffering would contribute to the conversion of sinners. On February 19, 1920, Jacinta requested Holy Communion and extreme unction from the hospital chaplain, foreseeing her imminent death. Despite the chaplain's attempts at reassurance, Jacinta passed away the next day, fulfilling her prophecy of dying alone. After their deaths, Francisco and Jacinta were canonized. Their canonization process began in 1946. Although Jacinta's face was found to be incorrupt when exhumed in 1935, Francisco had decomposed. However, by 1951, when Jacinta was exhumed again for reburial in the basilica, decomposition had begun. In 1937, Pope Pius XII decreed that causes for minors should not be accepted for canonization due to their inability to fully comprehend and consistently practice heroic virtue, both essential for the process. However, in 1979, the Bishop of Leiria Fatima requested an exception for Francisco and Jacinta, who had died at ages 10 and 9, respectively. More than 300 bishops penned a letter to the Pope affirming that the children were recognized and revered for their sanctity, and that favors had been received through their intercession. They underscored the pastoral necessity of their canonization for the benefit of children and teenagers at that time. In 1979, the Congregation for the Causes of Saints convened a General Assembly to deliberate on whether children could exhibit heroic virtue. After extensive discussions, they concluded that some children could manifest extraordinary spiritual gifts in a manner akin to those with exceptional talents in music or mathematics. Pope John Paul II declared them venerable in 1989. And on May 13, 2000, they were declared blessed in a decree issued by the Congregation for the Causes of Saints. Now, let's explore the third secret. The third secret. Sister Lucia made the decision to withhold the third secret in her memoir from August 1941. In 1943, she fell seriously ill with influenza and pleurisy. During a visit on September 15, 1943, Bishop Silva suggested that she document the third secret to ensure its preservation in case of her passing. Despite this advice, Lucia hesitated as she believed she had been instructed by Mary not to disclose the secret. Bound by Carmelite obedience, which dictates that orders from superiors are to be regarded as coming directly from God, she was torn about whose directives to follow. Eventually, in mid-October, Bishop Silva sent her a letter with a direct command to write down the secret. The third secret. Despite receiving a direct order, Lucia continued to grapple with her inner conflict. She shared that she was able to resolve this turmoil after the Virgin Mary appeared to her in early January 1944 and instructed her, "Write what they command you, but do not give them what is given to you to understand of its meaning." The third part of the secret was transcribed on January 3, 1944, at the request of His Excellency, the Bishop of Leiria and the Most Holy Mother. In June 1944, the sealed envelope containing the third secret was handed over to Silva, where it remained until 1957, when it was eventually transferred to Rome. The bishop refrained from opening the sealed envelope, as Lucia had made him promise that it would be unveiled and made public to the world upon her death, or in 1960, whichever came first. First, on May 13th, 2083 years following the initial apparition of the lady to the children in the Cova Diaria, and 19 years after the assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II, Cardinal Angelo Sodano declared that the third secret would finally be disclosed. In his statement, Cardinal Sodano suggested that the secret about the 20th century persecution of Christians reached its climax in the unsuccessful assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II on May 13, 1981, the 64th anniversary of the first apparition of the Lady at Fatima. What exactly does this secret entail? Are we prepared to witness the unfolding of this secret event in 2024? The Vatican released the text of the third secret on June 26, 2000. It reads, "The third part of the secret was revealed at the Cova Diaria, Fatima, on July 13, 1917. I write in obedience to you, my God, who commands me to do so through His Excellency, the Bishop of Leiria, and your most holy Mother and mine." After the two parts, which I have already explained, at the left of Our Lady and a little above, we saw an angel with a flaming sword in his left hand. Flashing, it gave out flames that looked as though they would set the world on fire, but they died out in contact with the splendor that Our Lady radiated towards him from her right hand. Pointing to the earth with his right hand, the angel cried out in a loud voice, "Penance! Penance! Penance!" And in an immense light, resembling God, we saw a vision akin to figures reflected in a mirror. A bishop dressed in white, whom we perceived to be the Holy Father, led a procession of other bishops, priests, and men and women religious up a steep mountain. At its peak stood a large cross fashioned from rough-hewn trunks, reminiscent of cork tree bark. Before reaching the summit, the Holy Father traversed a city partially destroyed and trembling with distress, moving with halting steps and praying for the souls of the deceased he encountered. Upon reaching the mountaintop, he knelt before the cross, only to be slain by a group of soldiers who fired bullets and arrows at him. Following his martyrdom, other clergy, religious and lay people of various ranks and positions met similar fates, falling one after another beneath the arms of the cross. Two angels stood beneath the cross, each holding a crystal vessel in which they collected the martyr's blood to sprinkle upon the souls ascending to God. Cardinal Joseph Ratzinger, later Pope Benedict XVI, provided a theological commentary alongside the text of the secret. He stressed that the third secret of Fatima might not disclose a profound mystery or predict future events as many had speculated. He distinguished between public and private revelations, cautioning against interpreting the message as a specific prophecy. Ratzinger further discussed the symbolic imagery within the secret, suggesting its inspiration from traditional religious iconography. Regarding the message's essence, he reiterated the significance of prayer for soul salvation and the call to penance and conversion. During a homily at Fatima on May 13, 2010, Pope Benedict observed that the prophetic mission of Fatima remained ongoing. He expressed hope that the centenary of the 1917 apparitions would contribute to the fulfillment of the prophecy regarding the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary, bringing glory to the Blessed Trinity. Unlike the preceding two secrets, the reception of this one was marred by controversy. The unveiling of the third secret sparked criticism from the Catholic Church in Portugal. They lamented that the text was disclosed in Rome rather than at the Fatima shrine, where the purported events transpired. According to a report in the Times on June 29, 2000, the decision to withhold the prophecy for 50 years incited ire within the Portuguese church, particularly upon discovering the absence of doomsday predictions. Italian journalist and media figure Antonio Socci, among others, contested the authenticity of the 4-page handwritten text released by the Vatican in 2000, suggesting either its inadequacy or lack of completeness. They cite several reasons to support their skepticism. Firstly, critics point to discrepancies in the format of the third secret released by the Vatican. Father Joaquin Maria Alonso, the official Fatima archivist for 16 years, noted in his book that Lucia penned the secret on a single sheet of paper. Charles Fiore highlighted Malachi Martin's claim that the third secret comprised a single page in Portuguese, translated by 2 young Portuguese seminarians. However, Tarcisio Cardinal Bertone presented Sister Lucia's document on an Italian television program, revealing a single sheet of paper divided vertically and horizontally, featuring Lucia's handwriting on both sides. The Vatican reproduced this as 4 separate sheets. Secondly, skeptics argue that the complete third secret remains undisclosed, positing that it was initially composed in the form of a signed letter to the Bishop of Leiria. The text released by the Vatican does not adhere to this purported format. Sister Lucia reportedly mentioned in an interview with Father Jongan on February 3, 1946, that she had conveyed the third part in a letter to the Bishop of Leiria. Canon Galamba, an advisor to the Bishop of Leiria, claimed that Sister Lucia made the bishop promise to unveil the letter and share its contents with the world upon her demise, or in 1960. Antonio Socci raised doubts about the interpretation of the term letter. Furthermore, the Vatican's release of the third secret lacked any direct attribution of words to the Blessed Virgin Mary. Antonio Socci suggests that the third secret likely begins with the phrase, "In Portugal, the dogma of the faith will always be preserved, etc., as included in Sister Lucia's 4th memoir." However, these words are merely cited as a footnote in the Vatican-released text. In her 4th memoir, Sister Lucia explicitly stated her reluctance to unveil the third part. An interview featured in the November 11, 1984 edition of Jesus magazine delved into ominous themes such as the apocalypse, apostasy, and satanic infiltration within the Church. Cardinal Ratzinger, acknowledging his reading of the third secret, hinted at its relevance to the novissimi concerning the end times. He cautioned against prematurely disclosing the secret to prevent its misinterpretation as a mere sensational prophecy, emphasizing the dangers it poses to the faith and lives of Christians, as well as global stability. In a separate discussion with former Philippine ambassador to the Vatican, Howard D., Cardinal Ratzinger drew parallels between the messages of Akita and Fatima. Specifically, the Akita prophecy depicts a grim scenario of satanic infiltration into the Church, resulting in internal conflicts among high-ranking officials and the desecration of sacred spaces. On May 13, 2000, Cardinal Sodano announced the forthcoming revelation of the third secret, hinting at its link to the persecution of Christians in the 20th century, highlighted by the failed assassination attempt on Pope John Paul II in 1981. In a radio broadcast discussing Sister Lucia's canonization, Malachi Martin proposed that the third secret can only be fully understood within the context of widespread apostasy among both clergy and laity within the Catholic Church. This revelation underscores the somber and unsettling prophecies concerning the Church's future. Regarding the process of Sister Lucia's canonization, on the 3rd anniversary of her passing, February 13, 2008, Pope Benedict XVI announced his decision to waive the customary 5-year waiting period before initiating the cause for beatification for Sister Lucia. Subsequently, on February 13, 2017, Sister Lucia was bestowed with the title Servant of God, representing a significant initial step towards her eventual canonization. The Vatican submitted the Positio detailing Sister Lucia de Jesus dos Santos' life, virtues and reputation for holiness to the Congregation for the Causes of Saints for thorough examination to ascertain whether she led a life of heroic virtue. Ultimately, on June 22, 2023, Pope Francis elevated her status to Venerable. If you enjoyed this video, we kindly ask you to show your support by giving us a thumbs up, leaving a comment in the comment section, and activating your notification bell.